Yogah Karmasu Kaushalam.
Hi, welcome to the 14th session in our course HRM for non-HR managers. In the previous session, we discussed HR policies. In this session, we are going to discuss a topic which is at the border of legal compliance and proactive approach of the organization. We will start with the concept of discipline. We will present punishment-based discipline as well as more proactive, warning-based, non-punitive system of discipline. Reviewing these approaches, you would be able to evaluate which approach would help HR manager respond to the issues related to undesirable, negative and deviant employee behaviors in an effective and fair manner. Towards the end, we will present the concept of grievance and the do's and don'ts for managers who need to manage grievance. In the previous session, we discussed the importance of policies along with the accompanying procedure and rules as a crucial component of an organization's systems. Assuming that the organization's systems are aligned with its purpose, values and strategies, managers also need to consider the consequences of employees violating the rules, not adhering to the procedure and breaching the policies. One approach clearly is to take actions after such a breach has taken place. Another approach is to take possible measures that help prevent such a breach. In either case, employee discipline and grievance management come into picture. In the background of employee discipline, there is an understanding that employment is a contract and the employee is expected to work diligently. Assuming that the contract is a fair one, which it may not be, both the employer and the employee need to keep their ends of the contract in an ethical manner. Thinking about employee discipline helps manager identify employee behaviors which are not in the organization's interest and may be contrary to the expectations from the employee. These are also called deviant workplace behaviors. Late coming, tardiness, stealing and negligence are examples of deviant workplace behaviors. These behaviors have negative implications for organization's performance. Committing breach of rules or policy, engaging in deviant workplace behaviors may attract punishment on the employee's part. While punishment may be necessary, most experts caution against its use because punishment creates negativity, fear, and resentment among the employees, not just the one who was punished. Effective disciplinary system in an organization can help achieve the desired organizational performance while being fair and sensitive to the employees. In the next section, we discuss the purpose of discipline. Dessler mentions that the purpose of discipline is to encourage employees to adhere to the rules and regulations of the organization. Effective disciplining deters the employees from violating a rule. When disciplinary system is unfair, it can trigger retaliatory employee misbehavior. In contemporary organizations, effective disciplining is challenging the managers to decide if it would be ethical to monitor what employees post on the social media and take necessary action when they act in ways which are not consistent with the standards of responsibility or sensibility. In short, managers may wish to design disciplinary system which is effective in discouraging unwanted behavior and at the same time is fair. Such a system may be created using three pillars. One is clear rules and regulations, the other is a system of progressive penalties, and the third one is an appeals process. We will discuss each of the three next. Rules and regulations address issues such as theft, destruction of company property, drinking on the job, and insubordination. Organizations may take a position, for example, poor performance is not acceptable. Each employee is expected to perform his or her work properly and efficiently. Alcohol and drugs have no place at work. The use of either during working hours and reporting for work under influence of either are both prohibited. In case of policies, as discussed in the previous session, a zero tolerance policy towards substance abuse will support the second statement. Effectively drafted policies explain the underlying values, and the rules spell out what is and what is not acceptable behavior. Informing employees about policies, procedures, and rules and obtaining their agreement with those is an important part of onboarding. The employee handbook usually contains the rules and regulations. Progressive penalties that function in a systematic manner is the second pillar of effective disciplining. Penalties typically range from oral warnings to written warnings to suspension from the job to discharge. The severity of penalty usually reflects the type of offense and the number of times it has occurred. For example, in the first unexcused case of late coming, most supervisors may alert the employee about the requirement of timely reporting at work and compliance to the standard procedure if they are going to be late. But if the employee repeatedly comes late to work, it may attract more severe action, including discharge in some organizations. In addition to rules and progressive penalties, formal disciplinary appeals process is required. It is this provision that allows the party injured due to disciplinary action to file an appeal and get senior management to review the action so that the employee gets a fair treatment. Step 1 of the appeal process involves filing of a written complaint to a member of management, for example, a manager, senior manager, or managing director. Time limit may be defined. In step 2, the complainant who is not satisfied by the treatment in step 1 submits a written appeal to the vice president or senior vice president of the division. Finally, in step 3, executive appeals review, the complainant may submit a written complaint within prescribed time limit from the decision under previous step to the employee relations department or similar office created to ensure fairness and justice at work. Such an office investigates the matter and prepares a case file for the Executive Review Appeals Board. The Appeals Board make a decision to uphold, overturn, or initiate a board of review or to take the appropriate action. Some companies establish independent ombudsman, neutral counselors outside the normal chain of command to whom the employees can turn for confidential advice. But if you have noted the flow of progressive discipline, you would notice that the employee makes the first breach and then the disciplining starts. World over, there are many experts who believe that it is a negative and reactive approach and discipline can be managed in a more constructive and proactive manner. In a famous article in Harvard Business Review, Campbell, Fleming, and Grote highlight a central argument against the traditional punishment-based approach to discipline. Punishment can produce fear and compliance, but not a workforce committed to the organization's goals, policies, and rules. Further, the supervisors who only have reactive punishment as their tool earn apathy, hostility, and uncomfortable relations with their subordinates, apart from possibly reduced output just because they are doing their jobs. It would seem that supervisors under a punitive system suffer more than the employees. And their job is not easy either. Once a supervisor signals a final warning as per the system, the senior management may reverse it. The supervisor may be subjected to pressure, and people may perceive that disciplinary issues arise because of supervisors' incompetence. Considering all these factors, supervisors initiate the discipline process only when it has good chance to end in prescribed action of written warning or termination. That means that the whole system of discipline becomes oriented to punish rather than inform and rehabilitate the employee. Thus, employee may be likely to repeat the offense because the equation is balanced. They made the mistake, they paid the price. Instead, the non-punitive disciplinary system replaces warning with reminder. It begins with reminding the employees, in general, about the organizational goals, policies, procedures, and rules. When the supervisor observes a deviation, the supervisor responds with an oral reminder to the employee in private. Based on understanding the employee's context surrounding the deviation, supervisor tries to solve the problem. Such a reminder is not a warning about serious consequences which will follow if the deviant behavior is continued. Rather, the supervisor draws the employee's attention that it is their responsibility to act within the reasonable standards of performance. Records of this discussion are not kept. If the deviant behavior continues, the second step is a written reminder. This reminder is serious, but it doesn't threaten dire consequences. This reminder presents the business case supporting the desired behavior. It describes employees' behavior which is a deviation from it and follows it up with counseling where the supervisor and the subordinate develop an action plan to eliminate the gap between desired and actual behavior. A written memo summarizes the gist of joint discussion and action plan, and a copy is saved in the employee's file. The focus of both the steps is on obtaining the employee's agreement to change. If these steps do not succeed, the employee is placed on one-day decision-making leave. The organization pays for the leave to demonstrate that it wishes the employee to continue as their member and that there is no hostility. The employee is required to return the next day after a decision, either to make a total commitment to the performance expectations and stay, or find a more suitable work elsewhere. If the employee decides to stay, the supervisor jointly makes an action plan and reminds the employee that the failure to follow the plan would result in termination. Again, a memo is written stating the plan and reminder, and a copy is saved in the employee's file. The difference between a warning-based and reminder-based system is highlighted in the table which you can see on your screen. It would seem that supervisors under a punitive system suffer more than the employees. And this job is not easy either. Once a supervisor signs a final warning as per the system, the senior management may reverse it. The supervisor may be subjected to pressure. Dessler mentions the hot stove rule. According to him, under this rule, the supervisors traditionally use 4 points for maintaining discipline in a manner similar to using a hot stove. The label on the stove declares that a stove would be hot, so it should not be touched. But when the label is ignored, the system, just like the hot stove, delivers consequences which cause pain that is consistent, impersonal, and immediate. The fair discipline guidelines are summarized by Dessler as we mentioned now. One is, make sure the evidence supports the charge. Next, make sure the employee's due process rights are protected. Then, warn the employees of the disciplinary consequences. The rule that was allegedly violated should be reasonably related to the efficient and safe operation of the work environment. Fairly and adequately investigate the matter before administering discipline. The investigation should produce substantial evidence of misconduct. Apply all rules, orders, or penalties even-handedly. The penalty should be reasonably related to the employee misconduct and to the employee's past work. Maintain the employee's right to counsel. Don't rob subordinate of his or her dignity. Remember that the burden of proof is on the manager. Get the facts. Don't base a decision on hearsay or on your general impression. Don't act while angry. In general, do not attempt to deal with the employee's bad attitude. Focus on improving the specific behaviors creating the workplace problem. In this session so far, we have discussed discipline from the perspective of the organization's goals, policies, procedure and rules. The idea was that the deviation on the employee's side would result in the failure of the organization to achieve its goals and meet performance standards. You would also agree that it is also possible that the action of the organization may be disputed by its stakeholders, including employees. The dispute may arise out of difference in the interpretation of the action, the aims behind it, and the consequences of it. Because the relations between the organization and its members are hierarchical, one is the employer and the other is employee, and the power equation is usually skewed in favor of the employer. Around the world, laws exist to protect the employees in this skewed context so that their interests are protected. Hence, when the employees dispute the action of the organization, there is a system where their grievance can be formally recorded. The Oxford Dictionary defines grievance as an official statement of complaint over something believed to be wrong or unfair. Research has consistently found that organizations where the number of grievances filed is high also register low across performance indicators such as production, productivity, profitability and quality. Thus, there would be a point in supporting the argument that an effective HR manager should be as mindful of managing the discipline as of the grievance in a fair manner. In most cases, unionized staff is involved, but a fair grievance management system is equally serious when the grievance is filed by an individual. Consider the sources of grievances next. The grievance procedure provides an orderly system whereby both employer and the union determine whether some action, usually on part of the employer, violated the contract. It is the vehicle for administering the contract on a day-to-day basis. Under grievance management, the discussion is focused on existing contract between the employer and employee or the union. It is not about negotiating new terms or altering the existing ones. Usually the grievance involves factors such as wages, hours or conditions of employment. Some grievances are more serious and more difficult to resolve. Discipline cases and seniority problems, including promotions, transfers and layoffs, frequently appear on this list. Other issues include grievances related to job evaluations and work assignments, overtime, vacations, incentive plans and holidays. Dessler discusses 3 examples of grievance. One is absenteeism. An employer fired an employee for excessive absences. The employee filed a grievance stating that there had been no previous warnings related to excessive absences. Second example was insubordination. An employee on 2 occasions refused to obey a supervisor's order to meet with him unless a union representative was present at the meeting. As a result, the employee was discharged and subsequently filed a grievance protesting the discharge. Third example is about the plant rules. A plant had posted rule barring employees from eating or drinking during unscheduled breaks. The employees filed a grievance claiming the rule was arbitrary. A grievance is often a symptom of an underlying problem. Sometimes bad relationships between supervisors and subordinates are to blame. This is often the case of grievances over fair treatment, for instance. Organizational factors such as ambiguous job descriptions that frustrate employees also cause grievances. Union activism is another cause. The union may solicit grievances from workers to underscore ineffective supervision. Problem employees are yet another underlying cause of grievances. These are individuals who by their nature are negative, dissatisfied and prone to complaints. Discipline and dismissal both are major sources of grievances. A list of do's and don'ts of grievance management is presented by Dessler. The do's include investigate and handle each case as though it may eventually result in arbitration. Talk with the employee about his or her grievance. Give the person a full hearing. Require the union to identify specific contractual provisions allegedly violated. Comply with the contractual time limits for handling the grievance. Visit the work area of the grievance. Determine whether there were any witnesses. Examine the grievance personnel record. Fully examine prior grievance records. Treat the union representative as your equal. Hold your grievance discussions privately. Fully inform your own supervisor of grievance matters. The don'ts include a list as well. Don't discuss the case with the union steward alone. The grievance should be there. Don't make arrangements with individual employees that are inconsistent with labor agreement. Don't hold back the remedy if the company is wrong. Don't admit to the binding effect of a past practice. Don't relinquish to the union your rights as a manager. Don't settle grievances based on what is fair. Instead, stick to the labor agreement. Don't bargain over items not covered by the contract. Don't treat as subject to arbitration claims demanding the discipline or discharge of managers. Don't give long written grievance answers. Don't trade a grievance settlement for a grievance withdrawal. Don't deny grievances because your hands have been tied by management. Don't agree to informal amendments in the contract. In India, there are legal provisions governing how the grievance is managed and how the procedure to manage grievance should follow. We will discuss the legal aspects of grievance handling in another session. In this session, we have discussed employee discipline at length and have introduced the concept of grievance. Thank you for coming with us so far. We are ending this session here and we will see you soon.